I was deadheading my peace roses when I heard the diesel engine rumble to a stop in front of my house. The sound was so out of place on our quiet suburban street that I actually paused, pruning shears in mid-snip, and turned toward the driveway. A massive U-Haul truck sat idling at my curb, blocking my neighbor's mailbox. I straightened up slowly, my knees protesting after an hour of kneeling in the garden bed. At 62, I'd learned to pace myself, especially with the roses. They were my therapy, my project since Richard died 2 years ago. Every bush in this garden was something we'd planted together, and tending them made me feel close to him still. The truck door opened and my daughter Linda climbed down from the passenger side. She was wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Behind her, Craig emerged from the driver's side, already heading toward the back to unlatch the cargo door. "Mom!" Linda called out, waving like she'd just arrived for Sunday dinner. "We're here!" I walked toward the driveway, still holding my pruning shears. "Here for what, honey?" "I didn't know you were coming over today." "Oh, didn't I text you?" She pulled out her phone, making a show of scrolling. "I could have sworn I sent you a message. Anyway, we're moving in. Isn't that great?" The words took a moment to register. "Moving in? What do you mean, moving in?" "Just for a while," she said breezily, as Craig started hauling boxes from the truck. "We're saving for a down payment on a house. This way we can put away Craig's entire salary, and I can cut back my hours since you'll be here to help with the kids." I looked past her to see my 3 grandchildren tumbling out of Linda's SUV, which I hadn't even noticed parked behind the U-Haul. Mason was 8, Olivia was 6, and little Harper had just turned 3. They immediately scattered across my front lawn like they owned the place. "Harper, no!" I called out as the toddler made a beeline for my rose garden, but she was already grabbing at the yellow blooms of my Julia Child roses, the thorns clearly not deterring her curious fingers. Linda laughed. "She's fine, Mom. They're just flowers." Just flowers. Richard and I had planted those bushes for our 30th anniversary, but I swallowed my irritation and tried again. "Linda, honey, you can't just move in without talking to me first. This is my home." "I know it's your home," she said, her tone shifting to that patient voice you use with confused elderly people. "That's why we're here. You've been rattling around in this big 4-bedroom house all by yourself for 2 years now. Don't you get lonely? This way you'll have family around. Dad would have wanted that." There it was. The dad card. She'd been playing it a lot lately, usually when she wanted something. Craig appeared beside her, carrying a box labeled kitchen. "Where should I put this, Carol?" "Put it back in the truck," I said. "This is a misunderstanding." He looked at Linda, who gave him a tight smile. "Just put it in the garage for now, babe. Mom and I need to talk." As Craig hauled the box away, Linda took my arm and guided me toward the porch like I was the visitor. "Look, I know this is sudden, but it's actually perfect timing. You're retired, you have all this space, and we really need to save money. The housing market is insane right now. We've been looking for months, and everything in our price range is either a teardown or an hour from Craig's work. So you decided to move into my house without asking me?" "I'm asking you now," she said. "And honestly, Mom, it's not like you're using all 4 bedrooms. Olivia and Harper can share the guest room, Mason can take the office, and Craig and I will use my old room. You'll barely notice we're here." "Where exactly am I supposed to notice you from?" She waved her hand dismissively. "You have the master bedroom. You'll have plenty of privacy." I watched as Craig made another trip to the truck, this time carrying a massive flat-screen TV. Mason was now pulling leaves off my hostas while Olivia had found a soccer ball somewhere and was kicking it perilously close to my front window. "How long is a while?" I asked. Linda brightened, clearly thinking she'd won. "Oh, probably just 6 months, maybe a year. Definitely no more than 18 months. 2 years tops. 2 years. If that," she added quickly. "But probably yes, around that. We need to save at least $80,000 for a decent down payment, plus closing costs. But with free rent and you watching the kids so I can work more hours, we can really accelerate our timeline. Free rent, free childcare. My house turned into their savings plan. I didn't agree to watch the kids, Linda." "Mom, you're retired. What else are you doing all day? Gardening?" She laughed. "You can garden with the kids. They'd love that." I looked at Harper, who was now systematically pulling the petals off every peace rose she could reach. Love that. Sure. I need to think about this, I said. Linda's expression hardened slightly. Think about what? Your own family needing help? I can't believe you're being like this. When I was growing up, Grandma Rose always said family comes first. Remember how she used to say that? Your Grandma Rose lived in her own apartment until she was 89, I pointed out. She valued her independence. That's different. She was alone. You have family who wants to be with you. I wanted to argue further, but Mason had started climbing my maple tree, and I was genuinely worried he'd fall. Mason, please get down from there, I called out. He ignored me completely. Linda didn't even turn around. Look, she said, pulling me back to face her. I've already given notice at our apartment. We're out at the end of the week. Where else are we supposed to go? You gave notice before asking me? I thought you'd be excited. Most grandmothers would be thrilled to have their grandkids around more. The manipulation was so blatant it almost made me laugh. Almost. I love my grandchildren, I said carefully. But this is my home, Linda. I've built a life here, a quiet life. I garden, I volunteer at the library, I take my watercolor class on Thursdays, and now you'll have family dinners every night. The kids can help you in the garden. Mason's old enough to learn about roses. And your watercolor class, she paused, her nose wrinkling slightly. Well, you can still do that. We'll work around your schedule. They'd work around my schedule. In my own house. By the time the sun set that day, they'd moved in completely. Linda had decided they needed to unpack while the kids still had energy, which apparently meant right now, immediately, regardless of what I'd said about needing to think. Craig had set up their enormous TV in my living room, angled so my reading chair was basically useless now. Mason's video game console sat on the coffee table Richard and I had bought in Maine on our 20th anniversary trip. Linda had made dinner, chicken nuggets and French fries for the kids, nothing for the adults, and announced that tomorrow we'd figure out a schedule. A schedule for what? I asked, picking up Harper's juice cup from my antique side table before it could leave another ring. For everything. Meals, cleaning, who watches the kids when. We're all in this together now, so we need to be organized. I went to bed that night in my own room, listening to Mason's footsteps running back and forth in the hallway above me, and wondered how my life had been reorganized without my permission. The schedule Linda created appeared on my refrigerator the next morning. According to this laminated monstrosity, I was responsible for watching the kids Monday, Wednesday, and Friday while Linda worked. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, when I didn't have anything important, I was expected to do the grocery shopping and meal prep so Linda could focus on her real work. What about Craig? I asked when I found her in my kitchen, feeding Harper yogurt at my counter. What about him? Where is he on this schedule? He works, Mom, full time. That's the whole point, we're saving his salary. And you work part-time. Which is a huge sacrifice for me, she said. I had to cut back my hours. My boss wasn't happy. I bit back about 20 different responses. Linda, I have commitments. My watercolor class, my library volunteering, my book club. Mom, those are hobbies. This is family. That afternoon, I came back from the grocery store, a trip that took 2 hours because Linda had texted me 17 times with additions to the list to find Mason and Olivia playing baseball in my backyard. With my roses as the outfield, 3 of my ebb-tide roses were completely trampled, their deep purple blooms crushed into the dirt. The trellis I'd spent weeks training my climbing iceberg roses onto was knocked over, the canes snapped. What happened to my roses? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Linda glanced out the window. Oh, the kids were playing. Don't worry, they're just plants. They'll grow back. Those plants are 15 years old, Linda. Your father and I planted them together. Exactly, Mom. They're old. Maybe it's time to do something different with the yard anyway. Make it more kid-friendly. We could put in a swing set where that garden is. The kids would love that. I walked outside and knelt beside my destroyed roses, the same way I'd knelt beside Richard's hospital bed 2 years ago, watching something I loved die that I couldn't save. By the end of the first week, my quiet home had become unrecognizable. Harper's sticky handprints covered my windows. Mason had somehow gotten permanent marker on my dining room wall. The living room was a perpetual disaster of toys, even though Linda had promised they'd clean up every night. My watercolor class had to be skipped because Linda needed me to watch Harper, who'd been sent home from daycare with a fever. My book club meeting was interrupted by 17 calls from Linda asking me to walk her through my meatloaf recipe because the kids won't eat anything else. When I mentioned that perhaps they should look for their own place sooner rather than later, Linda's eyes filled with tears. "I can't believe you want to kick out your own family," she said. "We're struggling, Mom. Do you know how hard it is to raise 3 kids on 1.5 salaries? And you have this whole big house just sitting here empty. Dad would be so disappointed in you right now." That one cut deep, just like she knew it would. On Sunday morning, 2 weeks after they'd moved in, I was in the kitchen making coffee when Linda came downstairs. She didn't say good morning, she just announced, "So Craig and I have been thinking, the kids really need more space. Harper's still in a crib, and she's getting too big for it, but there's no room in the guest bedroom for a real bed." "Where would you put it?" I asked, though I already knew where this was going. "Well, that's what we wanted to talk to you about. Your master bedroom is huge. You don't need all that space. What if you moved into the guest room and we gave the master to Craig and me? That way Harper can have the toddler bed in our current room, and you'd be nice and cozy in the smaller room. It makes so much more sense." I set down my coffee mug very carefully. "You want me to give up my bedroom?" "It's not giving it up, Mom. It's sharing. This is a family home now. We all need to compromise. I compromised when I let you move in without notice. I compromised when I rearranged my entire schedule. I've compromised my peace, my routine, my garden, and my sanity. I'm not compromising my bedroom." Linda's face hardened. "Fine. Be selfish. I guess I know where I stand." She turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. "Oh, by the way, I invited a realtor friend to come look at the house on Wednesday, just to get an estimate on what it might be worth. I was thinking, this place is way too big for you long term. What if we sold it and split the money? You could get a nice little condo, something easier to maintain, and Craig and I could use our half for a down payment. It would solve everyone's problems." She said it so casually, like she was suggesting we order pizza for dinner. "This is my house, Linda. Mine. Your father and I bought it 30 years ago. We raised you here. His name is on the deed with mine." "Was on the deed, Mom. He's gone, and you can't keep living in the past. Dad would want you to be practical." I stood there in my kitchen, in the house Richard and I had chosen together, where we'd painted every room, replaced every fixture, planted every tree, and I realized something. Linda hadn't moved in to save money or to spend time with me. She'd moved in to take over. On Wednesday afternoon, I was pulling weeds from what remained of my rose garden when a silver Lexus pulled into my driveway. A woman in a sharp blazer got out, carrying a tablet and wearing a professional smile. "Mrs. Peterson? I'm Jennifer Hayes from Prestige Realty. Linda said you were thinking about selling?" I stood up slowly, my back aching. "No, I'm not thinking about selling." Jennifer's smile faltered. "Oh," Linda said. "Linda doesn't own this house. I do." "Mom!" Linda appeared from inside, slightly breathless. "I see Jennifer's here. Great. Come on in, Jennifer. I'll give you the full tour." "Linda, I just told her I'm not selling. We're just getting information, Mom. It doesn't hurt to know what it's worth. Come on, Jennifer." And she walked the realtor into my house like she owned it. I followed them, my hands shaking now. Linda was pointing out the great bones and original hardwood while Jennifer took notes. They went from room to room, Linda chatting about potential and market value while I stood there invisible in my own home. When they got to the master bedroom, my bedroom, Linda said, "And this is the master. Huge, right? You could easily split this into 2 rooms, or it's a dream primary suite if you keep it as is." "Linda, stop," I said. She turned to me with exaggerated patience. "Mom, we're just talking." "No, get out." "Excuse me?" "Get out of my bedroom. Get out of my house. All of you." Jennifer looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. "Maybe I should come back another time." "There won't be another time," I said. "This house is not for sale. Not now, not ever." Linda's face flushed red. "Mom, you're being ridiculous. This is just a conversation. A conversation about selling my house without my permission. After moving into my house without my permission. After reorganizing my entire life without my permission. I'm done, Linda." "Done?" What does that mean? It means you have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. The color drained from her face. You're evicting us? Your own daughter? Your grandchildren? I'm reclaiming my home. We have nowhere to go. You had somewhere before you moved in here. Find another apartment. We can't afford it. That's the whole point. We're trying to save for a house, and you're going to throw us out on the street? You're not on the street. You have a month. Linda's shock turned to rage. I cannot believe you. What kind of mother are you? Dad would be ashamed of you right now. He always said family comes first, and you're choosing your stupid roses over your own grandchildren. Something in me snapped. Your father is not here to be disappointed in anyone, Linda, and you don't get to use his memory to manipulate me. He would be ashamed of what you're doing, moving into my home without asking, destroying the garden we built together, trying to sell the house we bought, and guilting me every step of the way. I'm not guilting you. You've played the dad would want card at least a dozen times in the past 2 weeks. Well, I'll tell you what Dad would want. He'd want me to stand up for myself. He'd want me to have boundaries. He'd want me to live my own life, not sacrifice everything for an adult daughter who sees me as free rent and free childcare. Jennifer had quietly slipped out during this exchange, probably texting her office about the crazy clients. Linda's eyes filled with tears. I can't believe you're doing this. We're your family, and this is my home. You have 30 days. We won't go. Then I'll call a lawyer and make it official. Your choice. I walked to my bedroom, grabbed my phone, and dialed my attorney's number right there in front of her. Harold had handled Richard's estate, and I knew he'd help with this too. Harold? It's Carol Peterson. I need to discuss an eviction notice. Linda stood there, her mouth open, as I calmly gave Harold the details. When I hung up, I looked at her directly. He's drawing up the papers. They'll be served tomorrow. You're really doing this. I really am. She burst into tears and ran from the room. I heard her telling Craig what happened, heard his angry response, heard the kids asking what was wrong. I sat down on my bed, in my room, in my house, and waited for my hands to stop shaking. The next 3 weeks were tense. Linda alternated between giving me the silent treatment and launching guilt trips. Craig muttered about ungrateful and heartless every time he passed me. The kids, sensing the tension, acted out even more than usual. Mason put a soccer ball through my kitchen window. Olivia drew on my walls with crayon. Harper destroyed my remaining peace roses, pulling them up by the roots while Linda watched and did nothing. I tried to stop her, Linda said with a shrug. But you're kicking us out anyway, so what does it matter? Friends called. Linda had told them her version of events, the one where her cruel mother was evicting her innocent family for no reason. My phone filled with messages telling me to reconsider, to think of the children, to be more understanding. Only my friend Margaret saw through it. She tried to sell your house? Margaret asked when I finally told her everything. Carol, that's not just entitled, that's delusional. She genuinely seemed to think it made sense. Because she's not thinking of you as a person. She's thinking of you as a resource. The house is a resource. Your time is a resource. You're just means to an end. The clarity of that hit me hard. Margaret was right. Somewhere along the way, Linda had stopped seeing me as her mother and started seeing me as a solution to her problems. On moving day, Linda barely spoke to me. Craig loaded the U-Haul in angry silence. The kids were cranky and confused. Mason kept asking why they had to leave Grandma's house. Because Grandma doesn't want us here anymore, Linda told him, loudly enough for me to hear. I stood on my front porch and watched them load the last box. Linda came up to me, her face hard. I hope you're happy, she said. You chose an empty house over your family. I chose myself over being taken advantage of. Same difference. No, Linda. It's not. She turned to leave, then looked back. Don't expect us to visit. Don't expect to see your grandchildren. You made your choice. So did you, I said quietly. The U-Haul pulled away. Linda's SUV followed, and then my street was quiet again. I walked back into my house, my empty, peaceful house, and stood in the living room. The indentations from their furniture were still visible in the carpet. Harper's crayon marks were still on the wall. The window Mason broke was covered with cardboard. But it was mine again. I made myself a cup of tea, walked out to my destroyed rose garden, and sat down on the bench Richard and I had placed there 20 years ago. 3 of my bushes were completely dead. The trellis was broken, Blooms lay scattered and crushed in the dirt. But roses are resilient. They grow back. You prune away the dead parts, give them time, and they come back stronger. I could work with that. Over the next few months, I rebuilt my garden. I replaced the destroyed bushes with new varieties. I repaired the trellis. I went back to my watercolor class, rejoined my book club, and started volunteering at the library again. Linda called once, 3 weeks after she moved out. She didn't apologize. She asked if I'd reconsidered helping out with childcare since I obviously had so much free time now. I told her no and suggested she look into daycare programs. She hung up on me. A few friends still think I was too harsh. They tell me family is family, that I should forgive and forget, that grandchildren need their grandmother. But I remember what my own mother told me when I was young. Never let anyone, not even your children, make you small. You grew them, they don't get to shrink you. It's been 6 months now. My roses are blooming again. The peace roses I thought were dead have sent up new canes, strong and green. The house is quiet, but it's not lonely, it's peaceful. I have my Tuesday morning watercolor class. I have my Thursday book club. I have my weekends in the garden. I have dinners with Margaret and afternoon tea with my neighbor Susan. I have my life back. Sometimes I think about Linda and the kids. I hope they're doing well. I hope they found a place they can afford. I genuinely do. But I don't regret my decision. Your children are not entitled to your life's work. Love doesn't mean erasing yourself. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for them and for yourself is to hold firm to your boundaries and let them figure out their own lives. The roses taught me that. You can't bloom if someone's constantly trampling your roots. I finished my tea and went back to my gardening. There was a new Julia Child rose I wanted to plant where the old one had been. Same variety, fresh start. It felt right.